say, welcome everyone to On the Real Side, our podcast. And today, very, very happy to have one of my personal favorites
Wow.
on my instrument. I
That's
think, I think one of the greatest alto players
wow, Bob.
really alive, but maybe, in the pantheon of alto players.
Wow.
It's Jessy Davis.
Wow. What kind words. Very kind words. I'm honored. Really. I'm flattered and I'm honored that someone of your stature would feel that way about me in any case. It's
Well, I always have, and especially since last night, I decided I would give myself a little treat and say, well, I never listened to a whole bunch of you at once.
yeah, yeah, I hear you.
So I
I
spent
can
a few hours
understand that.
listening. I heard this thing you did in Hamburg at the Hamburg Birdland,
That's
the
right.
rhythm section, and
That's
I
right.
heard some other stuff. There was one other one. I think it might have been from Smalls with those cats.
Right,
And
right.
then I listened to an alto. Well, what was it called? Phil Wood sax machine.
Oh yeah,
And they
that was wow. Yeah,
some frightening company.
yeah, my
You held your own,
education.
man. You more than held your own with Phil, Charles McPherson, and Gary Bartz.
Yeah, wow, that was amazing. My
That was,
education.
and there's sure some beautiful alto playing go on, and
Absolutely.
all of that. You
Every
know,
night.
how long was that? How many times and how long did you do that?
Well, we did like I think it was 3 tours and they were each 5.5 weeks long. And the first two were with Phil Woods, Gary Bartz, and Charles McPherson and myself. And as time went on, certain guys couldn't make it. So they brought in Peter King.
Oh, he was a great alto player too.
Yeah, exactly. I had been hearing about him all my life, and that was the first time I really met him and got to hear him up close. Definitely. He came in smoking. And it was Peter King, and then there was Bobby Watson. Um, and Red Holloway was supposed to do it on alto, but
I never heard him play alto.
oh yeah, he's a great alto player.
Wow.
He used to tour with Stint, and they'd
Oh,
play alto and tenor together. Yeah, Stint handpicked Red, and
that was like super.
they would tour together.
Did they make any records together?
I don't know. Probably there's probably some recordings. Because he said that Stitt really liked his playing. And it was after his collaboration with Jug, you know. So I guess he wanted to keep that going.
Right. Yeah.
So he put something together with Red, and but yeah, it was 2 or 3 tours, and then I had the opportunity to keep it going. In I think it was 1995 or six with Vincent Herring and Wes Anderson.
And Phil too. It was always Phil.
Phil, no, those guys couldn't make it. At that time, Phil was concentrating on performing his music with orchestras around Europe. So he couldn't make it, and the other guys couldn't make it, and so we kind of changed it up, and they changed the name to the Charlie Parker Legacy Band.
I see. Because originally it was the Phil Woods sax machine,
It
right?
was Sax Machine,
Now,
definitely.
did Phil have his emphysema yet? At
No,
that point, he
no,
didn't yet have
no, he
that,
didn't
right?
have it yet. Well, it would, actually, I think he did have it, but he didn't know.
it hadn't been diagnosed yet.
Yeah, that came years later. And you know, I continued to play with Phil, you know, continued to do like two alto gigs and whatnot. And I think the idea at first was to have me there in case he got tired or something. But I got news for whoever put that together. He never got tired. Phil Phil was still blowing the walls down, man. You
Yes,
know.
he was. He was. Yeah, he was. I got emphysema, also. I
Yeah,
mean,
I
I blew
know,
a big
man.
break and everything, and Phil. I don't blame him. In those days, everybody, just about everybody was smoking.
Yeah, I
So
know. I
Phil
know.
and he had Zoot. I mean,
Yeah,
Jog, everybody, and they smoked, on the bandstand. And funny, Sonny Rollins, who actually quit smoking ahead of everybody else.
wow.
He
Right.
didn't want to be what he said once. He didn't want to be one of those guys, cigarettes and the drink on the bandstand and
Hey, man. I
that
mean,
kind of thing. And
it's for a
unfortunately,
nice photo.
yeah. I mean, Sonny, who did his yoga breathing and
Right.
he was serious about that. He unfortunately got it bad, worse than anybody with his pulmonary
Really?
fibrosis now.
Wow.
Yeah, he
I didn't
somehow.
even I didn't even know that. Wow.
Yeah, I
Yeah,
mean,
that stuff has a funny way of of happening. It's a strange thing. Like people that have never smoked getting like lung cancer and stomach cancer and all kinds of, so those kind of things. But yeah, I didn't know that about Sonny Rollins.
yeah, unfortunately, well, it's not a secret, or I wouldn't say it. You know what I mean?
Yeah, I understand. I got you.
I
I got
would
you.
never betray his trust, but it's sort of.
Yeah.
But so you guys, I mean, there's definitely. I tell you, Phil and Charles sound like they want to take each other's heads off.
Oh my
I
God.
mean,
Yeah, I mean, you know, I had no idea about past transgressions between guys. And yeah, I was just happy to be there. I felt like a fly on the wall every night, and I was happy to be that fly. Um, and yeah, Barks and I would sometimes we'd stand on the side and get our bag of popcorn and watch the show because those cats were trying to kill each other. It was something to behold. And so one day it happened, and it was kind of one of those early hits where one of those festivals where we went on early and got off, and there was nothing to do, so everybody went to the bar and started talking. And the next thing you know, those guys started talking to each other. And I just heard one guy say, you know something, man, after all these years, you think certain way about a person, but yeah, no, man, you're not half bad. You're not half bad either. And I mean, so it opened up the lines of communication. And from that moment on, it was just a beautiful hang. No animosity, no trying to kill each other. And it, it I was a willful student on all of those gigs. I learned so much um, about everything, but in particular alto, because it was just pure alto all the time. Yeah.
yeah, it sounds like you're having fun too, and you helped
Oh, it
out
was
well.
amazing. It was amazing.
So,
Some of the stuff I can't talk about, but
yeah,
it happened.
moments happen. You know, sometimes when I first went to Europe, I did this George Wein Grand Parade de Jazz in Nice,
Yes.
and Chet Baker brought me there
Woo.
with him. So he didn't bring a band; he just brought me. You know,
Wow, beautiful.
yeah, I was like 20, 23 years old,
Beautiful, man.
and you know, but I told people what happened was all these pictures on my wall. It was like there I was with all these like jazz all stars who for years had been the pictures on the wall.
Exactly.
About 90% of my pictures went down after that.
Yeah. No, hey, man. Yeah, he
And
takes
some of
on
the
a
petty
different
stuff that
meaning.
would happen, you know what I mean? I mean, like I remember Kenny Drew was on the first gig I played. We had Kenny Drew on piano and Chet was there and this and that. And Kenny was okay with me. He was nice.
Right.
But, you know, it was like Kenny and Chet had some kind of argument.
There you
Like
go.
years before.
Yeah.
Some kind of, I don't know, drugs, whatever.
I know it could be anything. Right.
You know, because they played like angels together.
Right.
But they wouldn't even talk to each other. It was like, you know, they just like
exactly. I've seen a lot of those.
Oh yeah, you know,
a lot of those. I mean, yeah, and I totally empathize. I understand when you say being the young man out, so to speak, seeing all of those people that you've been idolizing and just getting to meet them in person and be around them but yeah, there were so many of those kind of conflicts, and nobody wanted to talk about them, and they wouldn't. You very rarely were any of them resolved.
Yeah,
And
there was a guy who used to write for Downbeat when I was a kid, a humor columnist.
mm,
He went under the name of George Crater.
George,
George Crater, and he was actually one of the editors of Downbeat. Dan Morgenstern would know what his name.
right?
I remember that, but he was, you know, he wrote these humor columns. So he wrote a parody of liner notes,
Right.
and there's a guy named Zoot Finster and something.
Oh
And
boy,
he
right.
told Zoot that he wanted to make that he was going to make a record with RB Squarebuck. He said, "You mean you want me to play with him?"
Oh
He
no.
believe it.
Oh no. So he knew.
Yeah, you want me to play with him?
Yeah, that's
You know?
I mean, yeah, it's like, you know,
Well,
human nature.
you know what used to crack me up too years ago when I would sit in with Roy Eldridge at the half note. They had Anita O'Day on. I've
Wow.
told the story before, and Anita and Roy had worked on Gene Krupa's band together and had that hit and Let Me Off Uptown and you know all that stuff.
Right.
And they really did not like each other, man.
Wow.
Between sets, they would throw insults.
Really?
Yeah, Anita would use language that would shock a sailor, and
Wow.
and Roy be calling her all kinds of things.
Oh
And like
boy.
this kind of thing, they'd be sitting next to each other in a kind of a half whisper. You know,
Wow. Oh God.
and
Yeah.
when it was
Yeah.
time to hit, they get on the bandstand. Hey, Roy.
Exactly.
Oh, you think they were the best friends ever?
Yeah, I mean, hey, you know, and as a young musician, that's what you take from it. That no matter what happens off the bandstand, once it's counted off, hey, it's about something else. I saw one of those happen on a thing we were doing in Bern at the festival in Bern, kind of like a JATP thing, and Clark Terry put it together, and everybody was cool except for two guys, Ray Brown and Frank West. And I wouldn't have ever thought, you know, but every time one would make a suggestion, woo, the other would like light into it. And everyone would go, wow, where did that come from? But you also found out the hierarchy, because after a few times, all you heard was Clark Terry's voice go, hey, all right now, I don't want to use the language, but like basically stopped up,
Yeah.
and it stopped. But I never found out what that was about. They really couldn't stand each other.
Well, I had a similar thing one night with Chet and Zoot.
Wow.
And this is one of those George Wein things,
Right?
And so what happened at these things, they were basically jam sessions
Right.
that were working out. Now Chet had a different idea.
Right, exactly.
He brought me over so we could play our thing. Because we were working on certain things together, like counterpoint and a certain sensitivity, way of playing
Right.
horns. And he didn't want a jam session. He didn't want to be part of an all-stars thing and all this. But I tried to tell him, plus he didn't have the dope that he needed either, which was a problem. So I'm trying to explain to him that, look, Chet, like this isn't one of those gigs. We're just gonna we got a whole bunch of other concerts, and we can
exactly. Yeah, those George Wein gigs were like that. They were like,
he wants this all-star thing, and just I don't, I'm tired of damn jam sessions. I don't know jam sessions.
Yeah.
Well, that's what we're contracted to do, I guess.
Well, yeah, exactly. No. That's exactly when he put those together.
Yeah.
That's it, because it was kind of. I think he was trying to be like Norman Granz.
Right, he wanted to be, and he was doing well at it.
Yeah, absolutely.
He loved music, and he loved musicians, and
exactly.
George,
Did George play piano?
Not with us.
Yeah, he played with us. Woo.
Yeah, that's another story. I played duets one day in the office.
Yeah.
When he went over to sign a contract, so and for a certain style of piano,
for a certain style of piano, absolutely.
I mean, but what happened with us at the bandstand? This is funny. So we're there.
Wow.
Right from the get-go, I know that Zoot and Chet got something not quite
That's
right.
Weird.
Yeah, now, before the concert, Benny Carter and Earl Warren played a 2 alto set together.
Wow.
So they were right before us. So I get up on the bandstand.
Amazing.
I get up on the stand, and Benny Carter walks over to me. I've never met him before.
Yeah.
He says, "Oh, an alto player."
Wow.
I said, I think so. Not so sure. I just heard. That's what I'm here for.
Yeah.
He says, "Oh, well, I must stick around to hear you."
Wow, that's
I'm gonna go, but I'm gonna stay around and listen to you. I go, "Really?"
Yeah.
Well, and so everything's cool. Now our set is supposed to be the horns are Chet, Lockjaw, Zoot,
wow,
and Joe Newman and me.
Man.
And the rhythm section was Gerald Wiggins on piano.
Right.
And Larry Ridley on bass.
Damn.
And I think it was David Lee from St. Rollins Band.
Beautiful.
So we're there. And so the beginning, they say, okay, well, let's play 4. Zoot says, let's play Yardbird Suite.
Wow.
I don't want to play Yardbird Suite.
Oh, no.
And Zoot says, well, I mean, Chet says, I want to play, let's play 4. This and that. And so Zoot says, well, I might not feel like playing that. He said, Chet says, well, but I want to play, so they argue. So one thing leads to another. And then Zoot says, Chet, little Chetty, little baby Chetty.
Wow.
What I get, and I'm like, oh no.
Yeah, here we go, right?
And then Chetty turns around and calls Zoot a drunk, which is,
no.
Because Chet doesn't drink. He does other things, but he doesn't drink. And he says, you're fucking drunk. And so anyway, everything cools out for a minute, and just counts off. Now while we take Bob,
right.
Nobody comes in, so I jump in. I say, well, I'll play the first solo.
Yeah.
I took it. So while I'm getting into my chorus, I hear behind me screaming, yelling, like you
no.
You never blah blah blah.
Oh God.
Now Jaws.
That was the first gig.
This is the second gig. First gig.
Oh God.
But I think it's the third gig. But it's different gigs every night. Chet and Zoot were at one concert before and it worked out. But
man.
So then I hear a shout, like you say, seniority takes over. And Jaws, Lockjaw, stop. And you hear it above everything. And he waved everybody shut. And there's like 2,000 people out there.
Wow, man.
And so I said, so we all stop. and he turns around, he says, "Excuse me," to the audience. "Excuse me, we have to a little something to work out here. Bear
That's
with us."
crazy.
And he turns around, and then Chet stomps off the bandstand.
Wow.
So I go off the bandstand to try to get him to come back on the bandstand. I'm saying, Chet, you're making this comeback, and like there's a lot of press here tonight and this and that. Why don't you just come back and play and make up with Zoot, and you can do this and this and that. And Chet said, "I'm not going back up there, and neither are you." And I said, "Well, wait a minute, I can't. Benny Carter is there." He said, "He's
Exactly.
me. Plus, I grew up listening to all these cats, and
I mean,
I'm not in a position to really tell all these cats to."
yeah, I mean, and then they were all giants, man. No, that was the time where giants walked the earth, man. Those
I
cats,
know.
shit.
So then Chet comes at me, and I turn my back. I got my horn around my neck, and I just lean over, and he kicks me in the
What?
ass.
Oh
He kicks
no.
me in
Oh
the ass. Now
God.
George Wein is watching this. He's on the side, and I'll never forget. He says, "Now, gentlemen, no one around here will raise a hand to anyone." And Chet says, "I
Wow.
didn't raise a hand. I raised a foot." And
But who did he design? Like usually George would kind of unofficially assign a leader. Like when I did it, it was always kind of like Clark Terry. Um, and there were still fights over who was the leader, even with Clark Terry being the unofficial leader.
uh,
So did George kind of put Lockjaw in charge, or
well, one had the feeling of that,
right, right?
but nobody really seemed to acknowledge it.
But no one ever said anything.
From my
When
position,
I
all I
did
knew.
Browns, no one ever said, "Okay, this is the leader. Or I'm the leader." It's just everyone just followed along, and yeah, you play all of those same tunes, you
Yeah, the
know.
only thing I knew was that if there was a leader, it wasn't me. So
Yeah,
I
well,
just
yeah, for sure.
yeah,
Without a doubt.
followed along. But
But I know you were happy you were not the leader because
oh, I don't want that authority, but it's sort of it kind of balanced out in the end. I guess it did, but I don't want to
right,
talk that much about that. But that's I mean, just those kind of situations
right,
that But I mean, let's say most of our experiences with these so-called all-star groups, most of mine have been very positive.
absolutely. I
I
mean,
mean,
I mean, definitely. Well,
you know,
positive for you, and of course, it was for me being a young man out on the ones that I used to do. Like for a long period. I got to meet a lot of those guys. My first professional gig was Illinois Jacquette's big band. And a lot of those cats were either in the band or associated with it at different points. And so we'd hit all of the festivals and travel around. And yeah, I got to meet a whole lot of those cats. Um, and from there, I started doing some of those jazz parties like Dick Gibson's.
yeah, the Colorado one.
Yeah.
Yeah, I never did any of those.
Well, but all the cats you named just now, they used to be there. Benny Carter was there almost all the time. And I made the mistake of sitting at a dinner table with Benny and getting on his nerves.
Really?
Yeah, because I kept asking about funky blues. Yeah, man, that recording you did with
Oh,
you and
yeah.
Charlie Parker and Johnny Hodges, I never did that. And I said, no, 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 no. I listened to it all the time. And he said, I never did it. And I said, yeah, but and then yeah, he lit into me. What did I tell you? I never did it. And he would not acknowledge ever playing with Bird.
That's funny.
When Nolly's playing with Bird, but he talked about Cannonball, but he denied it, denied it, denied it. And that's when I found out Benny Carter was kind of a gangster, man.
Oh, he's a tough guy. They say,
Yeah,
he was the only, he was a pugilist. I mean, he was a good
yeah,
boxer,
exactly.
and he could kick Ben Webster's ass.
He was a gangster,
I
man.
mean, really, yeah. How'd you find that out? I mean, by his
About
by his
about
method of talking, you mean, or to you there? Because he was a gentle person.
he was, and that was my mistake to think that here's this man. He just seemed always like a gentleman, and which
Yeah,
99.9% of the time he was, but don't poke him. Don't poke the bear.
yeah. I saw
And
him in action. We became pretty good friends. I would
yeah,
follow him, and he actually had one of my records, which I was amazed at.
yeah. Oh,
Yeah,
I believe it. I believe it.
but he was. I was amazed that he was aware of that. I tell you, I'm still high from that. But
No.
Benny one night Chet and I went to hear him in
Mm,
Brussels at this club called
right,
Paul's, P-O-L-S, Paul's in Brussels.
right, right,
And he was there, with the house rhythm section. And he's playing, and I'm hanging out with him between sets, and he's tolerating me. And and but a guy comes over to him, and Benny spoke pretty good French.
Oh, I didn't know that either.
Yeah, he had gone
I
over there
believe it.
with Hawk and Bill Coleman.
Right.
He was the first kind of expatriate, and he spent close to a year over there, I think.
Mm,
I'm not that much of a historian, but something like that.
right,
So a cat in French says to Benny, um, excusez-moi, est-ce que vous êtes en Europe souvent? Are you in Europe often?
right.
He says, mais oui, check down sometimes.
Oui.
And the guy says, well, um, he said, I have a club not far from here, but not in Brussels, but in another part of Belgium.
Right,
Would you maybe come and play at my club?
right.
Vous pouvez jouer le prochain
Oui,
soir, next
oui.
time you're here, and
Je
blah, blah, blah.
comprends.
So Benny goes, oui, c'est pas, and he got that raised eyebrow.
Right?
He had that way of like raising his eyebrow, like, oui, c'est possible. And like this. And the guy, then he asked him he poked the bear.
Yeah.
The guy says, c'est combien vous êtes payé ici? How much money are they paying you here?
Oh no. Yeah, that's totally the wrong thing to ask Benny Carter.
Right. And
Absolutely.
he was so cool, Jessy. He lifts that eyebrow and he looks at the guy and says, c'est mon affaire. No, that's my
Yeah,
business. No.
exactly.
And with that one statement, he just shot the guy down. And I'm sure he probably did play the gig and everything, but the guy
Well,
knew
no,
that was going to be called by Benny, was going to call the price. Benny was in control.
exactly.
That, and those cats could show you like that way if you just watch them. Right?
Absolutely.
One little
Absolutely.
gesture.
I learned a lot about Benny Carter from the other guys. And they say, look, Benny Carter used to manage his bands and all of these gigs, and he had to work in those days. They said in those days they had to work for mobsters and gangsters in their clubs and whatnot. And they said one time guy didn't want to pay the band. And Benny went in and he put his rod on the guy's desk and demanded that they get paid. And the other guys were so scared. And now Benny came out and yeah, he had their money. And I've heard so many stories like that, where when he needed to be, yeah, you don't mess with Benny Carter.
Yeah. I also heard similar stories about Clifford Brown, too.
Yeah, really.
That he was
Clifford
somebody, yeah.
Brown?
Yeah. Art Farmer told me a story. One time
Wow.
we were doing a gig, and there was the band before us just went way over their time limit. They were playing for the hometown crowd.
Wow.
And this was kind of a drag because it made our set a little shorter, but it didn't really. But Art, I had all this time alone in the dressing room, with Art, and we knew each other, but I got to one of
Right.
the you get to ask the things you always wanted to ask somebody.
Yeah, man.
So I started to pick his brains about Clifford, and we started to what was
The
he?
right guy to ask.
Yeah, and he said this was a very good story. I think I probably told this before to people, but Art said there was a band manager on Lionel Hampton's band
Oh
that was
no.
notoriously mean
Oh God.
and nasty. He said all the cats really despised this guy. He was terrible, and he was a bully.
Wow.
And one of the people he really would pick on was Gigi Grice,
Wow. Everybody.
because Gigi, being a quiet
Yeah, that's what I
type of
heard.
guy,
I
a little
heard.
shy, he was perfect target for this cat.
Right?
And the cat wouldn't let up off of him. So
Okay.
Clifford told him, he said, "Look, you got to lay off Gigi, my friend." He said, "I don't want to have to make you regret that." And the guy
Wow.
kind of shrugged him off. That's what Art said. Clifford just said that to him. He said, "If you do not lay off my friend, you will regret this."
Wow.
So one day they're on the bus, and the guy starts digging into Gigi. He said, and the way Art put it, he said, "And dear sweet Clifford pulls out a shiv, and he goes up to
Wow.
the cat, and he says, 'Motherfucker, you.
Yeah, right.
What did I tell you was
Wow.
going to happen next time you mess with my friend?
Yeah.
Now, this is your very last chance, because the next time," and he held the knife right up to the side of the guy's head. He said, "I'm going to cut you. I'm not going
Wow.
to kill you, but I'm going to cut you."
Right.
And then he went back to his seat. It all happened on the band bus,
Wow.
and in Europe or something. And the band applauded Clifford, and that was that.
Yeah, a lot happened on the band bus.
And so you were on Illinois Jackets big band. I mean, just one last thing about Benny Carter that's interesting. I
Mm,
always wanted to know, because I kind of noticed that he and Hawk kind of both
mm.
changed a little bit after Bird.
Yeah.
So I was talking to
Yeah.
him one day on the phone. I'm trying to think. Now I don't want him to go out on me, because I've seen this, and I think,
Yeah.
how can I ask him about Bird? Because I would like to know his impression of Bird. So I said, "Well, how'd you feel about Bird when Bird came on, and this kind of thing?" And he said, "Charlie Parker was the greatest musician of the 20th century
Wow.
in
Really?
any kind of music." He told me that.
Oh, wow.
He said he was. He said, and I said, "So would you say he changed your playing at all, or because I could kind of hear a little
Right.
difference,
Absolutely. Totally.
and he said, he said, Charlie Parker changed everybody's playing except Johnny Hodges. He said that,
That's
but
true, too. That's
unshakably
true.
himself. He was absolutely. He said, but Hawk and I, we would sit there and
Mm. Well, at least you got him to say something, because that's where I was going that day, and maybe he sensed that I was gonna ask too many questions about it. And
Well,
he,
he was a moody fellow.
yeah, I know, man. I
So,
know.
I mean, I've been married a few times, and I think you might have been more than once too. And none of us is maybe easy.
Yeah.
But I asked him once. He said, "Well, at the end of the night in Brussels," he said, "Well, I got to go up. I got a sandwich. I'm going to bring my wife. She's up in the room. I'm going to go up and I said, 'Oh, that's so nice. You're bringing a sandwich to your wife. Your first wife?' He says, 'My fourth.'"
Well, hey, he had a lot of money too, so yeah.
Yeah, right. But let's get back to you, Jess. So your first gig was with Jacket's Big Band, but let's go before that. Did you grow up in New Orleans? Is that where you're
I
from?
grew up. I was born and raised in New Orleans, Louisiana, and I mean, not from a particularly musical family, but growing up in that city, it's in the culture. So all of the kids, you grow up and you learn to appreciate the music uh,
Mhm.
in New Orleans, and then was a time where to play an instrument was was the shit. Everybody wanted to play something, and so we all had begged our parents for stuff. I didn't want to play music though.
No, what do you want
I
to do?
wanted to play football.
Well, you built for that, yeah.
Yeah, I know. Well, I had my eyes set on football, and so we were playing in the school field on the school field on a Saturday or something, and it's this thing called running through. That's all you can call it. Like you got 30 dudes in the middle of the field, and they kick the ball, and whoever catches it has to go back to the beginning. And if you can run through those 30 dudes to get to the other goal, yeah, you, you got points or whatever. But you
And
had
they're
to keep
coming to
running
tackle you, but
through.
this is not touch football, right?
No, this is tackle like crazy.
And are you wearing pads and stuff? Oh
No.
no, just bare
No pads.
typical football.
And yeah, and you know, so I ran through about 3 or 4 times, and this big dude, Bobby. Bobby was the only one that eventually became a football player.
Uh-huh.
He was a big dude. Bobby could never catch me. And I could see his frustration every time I'm going through. I'm looking at him behind me and I'm going, come on, man, you ain't, you know. And but this one time, the last time I got through most of the cats and I didn't see Bobby. And I turn around and I'm running and Bobby hit me from the right side and I went and he stayed on top of me. So his weight fell on me and we both fell on my left side and it broke my collarbone. And I'm on the ground, lying flat on the ground, and I can't get up. Keep trying to get up, and the left side won't move. And then some guy comes and he points down and he screams. He goes, "Oh!" And I'm going, "What?" And I take my hand and I feel it, and a bone was like that,
No.
like coming through the skin, you know.
Oh, that's a severe.
And I almost fainted.
Oh,
And strangest thing in the world, my father had, at that moment was driving alongside the school, and someone flagged him down. It's strange. I never know how or why it happened that way. And he put me in the car. And we went to the hospital, and they immediately, you know, put it back in place and started the process for the casting and all of that other stuff. So I spent 3.5 weeks in kind of like a half body cast.
how old were you when this happened?
10. I
10.
was, yeah, I was 10. And my brother was a musician. You know, he was a tuba player
Oh,
and like a classical tuba player,
did he
which
become a
is
professional
strange in
musician?
New Orleans. What is it?
Did he become a professional musician as well?
No, because he eventually decided that he wanted to be a band director. So you know, it was all about music education with him. You know,
But he stayed in music.
yes. Oh
Yeah.
man, this cat, you know, he turned out to be one of the best music teachers I'd ever met in my life. I'm not
Oh,
just saying it because it's my brother, but um, all of his students went on to become like some of the best musicians in and around New Orleans.
really?
You know, and he had associations with some of the bands down there, like the Meters, and there was some that had hits like Chocolate Milk and I mean like so he he would see me on the couch not doing anything, and he said, "Look, man, um, why don't you let me? I'll teach you some music while you're laying around, you know." And I said, "Nah, don't worry about it." And one day he came home with a snare drum, and because he knew the cast was going to be taken off, and then I was going to have some kind of movement and therapy or whatever. So anyway, that's how I started on the snare drum, and I knew I didn't like it. I
You were no
didn't
drummer.
like it at all. And then he brought a trumpet home, and I didn't like it because he was trying to get me to do that buzz shit, you know. And then he brought an alto home, and instant, I fell in love, man. I fell
Uh-huh.
in love.
And you were about 10, 11 years old
I
now?
was 10.
10.
I was 10 throughout that whole period.
Now, had you heard when he brought the alto home, did he also say who you might listen to on alto, or did you get?
No, his purpose was to find something that I liked, and he commenced to teaching me music. And the first thing was I couldn't touch it because he opened the Rubanks books and the books on rhythm and rhythms and
Bugs Bauer?
chanting. Yeah, it was just all about learning music, and he did. He was a great teacher, and I learned how to subdivide. I learned how to do so many things, and yeah, I fell in love with the alto. You know, so music that was my introduction to music more so than anything else. That's why I you know I always tell that story because people think growing up in New Orleans, you know, it's like pops or something, you know, hanging out in the street, like you know. But if you're not from one of those musical families with a long line of generations of musicians that go back to like 1890 something or whatever, you know, you you come into it a different way.
So
But
you came into it a different way. You were from the Ninth Ward, and is that
I was from the lower ninth ward. I was from the lower ninth ward,
can you
and
explain that to me a little bit? Because I have no experience with New Orleans, but I was
yeah,
told that the Ninth Ward is like not the best part of town.
it wasn't. It wasn't the best part of town, and yeah, you know, most of the crime and the projects and yeah, it had a reputation. But you know, it was also a time in America where uh you still had neighborhoods. You know, it wasn't like a ghetto, but it it was economically depressed. But we had neighborhoods where you had old people sitting on their porches or whatever who would put you in check if you were doing something wrong.
Right. So
You
there
know?
was still a sense of community.
Yes, absolutely. People looked out for each other. And in essence, that's how we learned how to improvise. We all had our instruments and we'd get together on this little alleyway called Choctaw Alley. And the old people would be sitting out in the evening when the breeze start and whatever, and somebody would start playing something like the tuba player or something or the drums or whatever, and we would just all just chime in.
Really?
None of us knew what we were doing.
Was it a song? Like somebody might just start playing this kind of song, or
Yeah, it could be anything. It could be when the Saints go marching in, or it could be
sing or a hymn? Or,
some of the New Orleans stuff like Lil Liza Jane or the second line or just, you know, if somebody was real creative and played a bass line or something,
so
like
you,
on the tuba, you
so
know.
there'd be like several of you, like say
Oh,
four
there
or
are a
five
lot of
people.
cats. Everybody that had an instrument, you know, and we all kind of went to different schools. So everybody that had an instrument would come out and we would just play. And most of it was based in New Orleans music, like parade kind of carnival music,
Hmm.
you know. And we grew up hearing like the little backgrounds that musicians will play, or certain shouts or certain things, but we didn't know what that stuff was. And so by the time I started like high school, yeah, I used to do that all the time. I used to piss band directors off because I'd leave my parts and start trying to improvise while they're playing stuff, you know. Um, and I guess around when I was 12, I had the opportunity to audition for the New Orleans Center for Creative Arts, and that changed everything.
How so? Like that?
The New Orleans Center for Creative Arts was kind of like fame, like
I
the
see.
school.
Like LaGuardia in New York.
Oh yeah, definitely,
Yeah.
absolutely, and
Gifted, talented artistics.
exactly. And Ellis Marcellus was the jazz director there, and so my high school band director thought that it would be a good idea for me to audition for that. You know, he said, you might as well, because even when I write the parts, you try to improvise. So you should come and learn the proper way. And I went, and at that time, my hero was Grover
Uh-huh.
Washington Jr. So I went, and my audition was Mr. Magic. And I remember Ellis had a smirk on his face. And then he laughed, and he said, "Okay, man, you wait outside. I'll let you know if you got in or not, you know." And I was sitting outside, and he came out and he goes, "Look, man," he's like, I wasn't so encouraged by your choice of audition material, but we can deal with that because we can, yeah, I can deal with that because what what you played, how you played it is what I'm interested in. So anyway, he said I got in by the skin of
Feeling, yeah.
my teeth, and it changed my entire life. It changed everything.
And
Changed it.
uh,
He was instrumental in opening my entire world,
uh,
not just music, just in general. It changed my life, you know.
that's
So
wonderful.
that's basically my New Orleans musical experience.
So
And
he turned you on, like at this point when you were into Grover and everything. Had you heard Bird already? Had you heard
no,
you hadn't heard any of that? That
no,
was it, right? That was all.
I heard Cannonball, um, but I didn't know it was Cannonball. And I used to always try to play like stuff like Fiddler on the Roof and some of those things.
Right, those Cannonball
I had
records.
heard Cannonball, you know, but I didn't
That
really know.
sunrise, sunset is so
Yeah,
beautiful.
exactly.
That, that,
And Fiddler on the Roof,
yeah.
you know, I didn't know it was him, you know. And guys like John Handy and some other cats, you know, Stanley Turrentine.
Mhm.
But no, I didn't really know. And Noka not only broadened my horizons, but it just changed my life. It opened the doors um, of discovery in every single way. I mean, we had to study everything. It was like college preparatory, and we had to learn everything: opera, counterpoint. We had to learn. We had to analyze scores. I mean, just the whole gamut. You
And
know,
Ellis was running all this. He was really
well, Ellis was the jazz director,
jazz guy, but he,
and
yeah.
and
How old are you, Jesse? I never
I'll be 59 in September.
59. So you're around the same age as Winton, right? You're a
No,
little
they're
older.
they're a little old. They're a little older than me.
And
They
Bradford, they're a couple of years older. I guess that's right.
yeah,
They're
he
16.
and Bradford and those guys had already gone on. They started at Noka, and then Terrence Blanchard and Donald Harrison came after them. I was there with Harry Connick Jr., Delfeo. Um, I mean, yeah, there were quite a few people, but most notably Harry was there, and the actor Wendell Pierce and some other people were there for the theater. Now it was that kind of place, and it was just instrumental in shaping what I would come to know as music.
So now you graduated that school, the New York.
No,
Did you graduate or did you
there's
not
more
finish?
to the story. I told you when you asked me to do the podcast. I'm not good with like chronological events and whatnot.
That's cool. We can skip around.
Once I get going. So I did it. I was 12 when I first got into the school, and I did it uh, for about 3 months. And this was during the normal school year. So I had to go on Saturdays. I could only go on when you're 12, you know, you have to go on Saturdays. And so
Oh,
I
you had to go on Saturdays because of you didn't pass or
no, because we were in junior high school. The folks in senior high school, they got to do 3 classes at their normal school and then the rest of the day at Noka.
okay.
They did half and half.
I see.
We were underage, I guess you could call it. So we could only go on Saturdays. And so I remember every Saturday walking to where the bus would pick me up. And I would walk past the football field and I'd see all of my friends either getting together or playing football. And they'd be looking at me laughing, going, man, look at Beethoven. They would call me Beethoven. Say Beethoven, you want to play? I mean, they ragged on me so bad.
You still have aspirations after you
Oh
broke.
man, I love football, man. I loved it. And so they kept ragging on me. And so one day, um, my sister gets a call and it's Ellis, and he says, "Hey, I'm just trying to find out what happened to Jessy. He didn't show up today." And so when I got home, my sister said, "Where were you?" I say, "I'm not going back. I don't want to go back. I don't care about music. I want to play football. All of my friends are playing and having fun on a Saturday, and I have to go study music." And I quit. They allowed me to quit, and I didn't go back. And he tried 2 more times to convince me. And I said, no, I don't want to do it. You got to go on Saturday. It's the day off. And then I got to go to church all day and on Sunday. And I made all of these excuses. And he said, well, man, I think you're making a mistake. But, you know, uh, we all have to do what we have to do. So um, if you ever change your mind, come back. And so I didn't think about it until my last year in high school. And I was what, 16, 17. And my band director was a guy by the name of John Fernandez, who was kind of like a local celebrity trumpet player. And he played with Ellis and all of the New Orleans cats. And he said, man, because I was still improvise during
So you kept
marching
playing.
band. I
You
was
kept
still
playing your
doing
horn
stuff.
even when you dropped out of the school. You still play your horn and practice sometimes.
I was in the normal school. I was in the band. I was in
Oh,
the music program. I dropped out of NOCA.
you dropped out of Noga, but you kept playing the alto.
Yeah, of course. I loved the alto. I
Okay.
loved it. And so he said to me, he's like, man, you know something? I mentioned to Ellis Marcellus the other night that I have a student who's always trying to improvise, and he said he told him my name and Ellis remembered. He said, so that's what happened to him. Anyway, he convinced me to re-audition. And my last year in high school, I went back, and it just shows, man, that fate steps in always at the right time, and things happen for the right reasons.
I've had those lessons too. Yeah.
And yeah, I hear you, baby. And I went back, and it was a great time to go back in any case, because everybody, including his son, Delpheo, would skip his classes. I'd be the only one in class. So I benefited from,
You had like private lessons with him.
yes, everything. And we would just play tunes, and he'd explain to me why things worked and the logic. And I mean, really,
Oh, that's
it
beautiful.
was amazing. And yeah, so that's my New Orleans thing, you know. I mean, of course there's more, but for me, that's the gist of it, as it relates to music.
Of course, on the other hand, had you, being the devil's advocate here, had you played football,
No.
the money
You know what I found out? I found out um, I eventually wound up in Chicago because of Ellis. He went to do a master class at a university in Chicago. And he came back and he said, well, hey, man, what are you going to do after you graduate? I said, I don't know, man. I like history. Maybe I'll be a history teacher. I just really didn't get it, did I? And he said, history teacher. It's like, man, I'm talking about music. What are you going to say? I didn't think about music,
Ellis is saying this to you.
What is it?
This is Ellis telling you this.
Yeah. And he said, look, you're not ready to go to New York because all of the other guys had their eyes set on New York, like Winton and those guys. See, you're not ready to go to New York. So there's this program in Chicago, and I've asked the guy, well, he's going to set up an audition, and you can go. So anyway, that's what happened. I went and I auditioned, and I got in on a scholarship, and so I was in Chicago for 2.5 years, and during that time, I got a gig with the Chicago Bears band.
Oh,
Yeah, Chicago Bears band during the time of the championship team.
that was the time with the refrigerator and all.
Yeah,
And by the way, what was your position in football? I was
running back. I wanted to be Tony Dorsett. I was a running back.
Uh-huh. Okay. Yeah.
Yeah, but the thing is, yeah, that happened when I was 10, and that put it into thinking about it. But sitting right behind the end zone and seeing those big ass dudes that close, it wouldn't have happened. I would not have been a football player. There's cats are so, you've seen those
Yeah.
dudes are so huge. They're just huge. I mean, 6'5", 6'7", built like two refrigerators, all muscle.
Yeah. No.
It wasn't going to happen.
So now you're in the Bears band at the games. Now you get this, and that's the good Bears team, right?
Oh, it was great. It was great.
Mike Ditka Bears, right? That were,
Yeah, but at that time they were pretty sad.
oh yeah, they were the saddest team for a
Yeah.
while. Yeah.
But I was there. I was there. Well, once again, I left before the 85 season.
Uh-huh.
I left the gig because I pissed off the leader because I kept saying, man, I'm tired of playing. Can we play some new tunes, new songs, new this cat was like, no, this works, Jess. It works. Don't and so he got tired of me trying to rock the boat. And he said, hey Jess, you gotta go, man. That's but anyway, I skipped to that to say why I knew football would not be in the cards for me. Um, so